This is my house.
Hello there, back with Doctor Who again, and at least this one was better than the last one. Maybe. Slightly. It had a rocky start again, but for me, blossomed from being awful into mediocrity or slightly above average in the second half. But as of writing this episode is sitting on an 8.4 out of 10 on IMDb. That's the same rating as Aliens. For me, one of the best films ever made, and no, just no. The last episode, with the Meep in contrast, got this review. Although the show has always been progressive, look at the number of stories over the decades about, for example, threats to the environment, this special is preachy, and by the end, little more than a delivery system for the message. And that was a review from the BBC! This is not even a joke. The BBC have already gone far off of the deep end. When you've got too preachy for the BBC, boy have you gone overboard, and right into the damn Marianas Trench. Doctor Who got that review from the BBC, and Doctor Who is one of the BBC's shows. That's how far Doctor Who has fallen. But I have no doubt the Doctor Who stans will rally around the show again, the same people who were outraged in my last review when I suggested the Doctor could insult Donna for her weight, but for some reason they were not outraged with her calling him Skinny Man for years on end. But in this episode, we open up in England in 1666, and Isaac Newton is coming out of his house. For an important moment in human history, the supposedly semi-fictional moment when Isaac Newton was hit on the head by a falling apple and came up with the concept of gravity. Supposedly in reality, there was a falling apple, but it didn't hit him on the head. And if you ever want to visit Isaac Newton's family's house, the house is supposedly still there. It's in the Midlands of England, under 100 miles from London. If you go in August, you may even get apples. Or you can just look at it on Google Maps. And why exactly does Isaac Newton now appear to be Indian? It's not like there's much discussion about what the racial background of Isaac Newton was and what he looked like. There are plenty of portraits of him. I thought at this point everyone had collectively agreed that this was not a good thing to do. Having actors playing characters from different ethnic groups, like John Wayne playing Genghis Khan, or that time Mickey Rooney in Breakfast at Tiffany's played a very sensitive depiction of a Japanese man. I thought we had collectively decided that this was racist and unacceptable, so why the BBC and Disney now acting like this is an okay thing to do again? Why are they trying to bring back racism? By race swapping Isaac Newton, what I can see from this is that it's not a moral standard that the makers of the show hold at all, they're just doing what they think is fashionable. They do to a white historical character what they wouldn't dream of doing to a character of any other race. It doesn't seem to be based on any strict moral code of them not being racist. They're not against racial discrimination. In fact, sadly, the BBC seem to be all for it. The BBC seems to have a real racism problem on an institutional level, and it appears that it's not a rare perspective at this point. I've highlighted so many examples of fictional characters being race swapped in The Witcher that I lost count a long time ago. I just finished watching the series Robin Hood, where they took Robin Hood and his merry men and race and or gender swapped all of them. And I don't like it when it's a fictional character, never mind an actual historical figure. When it happened to Cleopatra it was bad enough. Isaac Newton's a hell of a lot more recent. Now I'm waiting with bated breath as to when Netflix will get around to making their biopic of the life story of Elon Musk. Are there going to be kids who watch this episode and their takeaway from it is that Isaac Newton was an Indian dude and an idiot? Because if Newton got inspired in real life by a falling apple, can you imagine what his response would be to seeing the TARDIS flying around over 200 years before the invention of human flight, and the two people in it, while sat in his apple tree, explaining that they're in a time machine? The Doctor and Donna make a bad joke about Newton understanding the gravity of the situation, and this sets up a terrible running joke for the episode, where Newton couldn't remember the word that they said and mistakenly called it mavity. And in the fiction of Doctor Who now apparently, this seems to have rewritten all of human history from that point on, causing Donna Noble for the entire episode to call gravity mavity repeatedly over the entire episode. It wasn't even funny the first time, and they do it over and over again.
Still, wherever we are, could be worse. We've got air, we've got light, we've got mavity.
And Newton didn't even come up with the word gravity. It comes from the Latin word gravis, meaning weight. He didn't just pluck a word out of the ether. So in the fiction of the series, human history has been fundamentally rewritten because Donna Noble couldn't manage to drink a cup of coffee without throwing it into sensitive electronics. Donna and the Doctor scoot off again because the TARDIS is still wildly out of control and they get catapulted entirely out of the universe. All of this because the Doctor offered Donna a cup of coffee and she's a moron. And as they step out of the TARDIS, they find themselves on an alien ship where Donna talks about how hot Isaac Newton was.
Was it me, or was Isaac Newton hot?
He was, wasn't he? He was so hot. Oh. Is that who I am now?
And the Doctor agrees and stop. Jeez, give it a rest. I don't care about the Doctor's sexuality. I never did. I was kind of fine with him not really having one. He's an alien. It hasn't got to work the way it does on Earth. But they couldn't even stop for a few episodes to try and win people back. I stopped watching the show altogether partway through the Capaldi era because of exactly this. And since then, it has, if anything, gotten worse. I only started watching the show again for YouTube reviews, and I used to love Doctor Who when I was a kid, but now they just can't shut up. Why is Doctor Who like this now? The Doctor is an ancient alien of indescribable knowledge or power, and he used to be. He can travel anywhere in the universe in an instant or even through time. Why is the show now so interested in talking about his love life or where he wants to put his knob? It's probably the least interesting thing about the character. For Christ's sake, Russell T Davies, we get it. You're gay. What do you want, a medal? I always kind of thought the Doctor was asexual anyway, or at least not interested in humans in that way, and it seems that that was the way multiple actors through the history of the character have interpreted the Doctor. Tom Baker, this guy, is quoted as saying that he played the fourth Doctor to be asexual and clueless to human sexuality. Colin Baker, this guy, noted a similar interpretation, stating his reasoning being that love is a human emotion and the Doctor isn't human. In 2009, David Tennant described the Doctor as a fairly asexual character, but it appears not anymore. In 2011, Matt Smith is quoted as saying, "The Doctor finds women peculiar. He's quite asexual." And by making the Doctor interested in men, you may be adding representation for gay men, but you're removing representation for people who are asexual, aren't you? And I buy the Doctor as asexual. Granted, the Doctor usually looks like a man, but if the Doctor can be living in a box with Karen Gillan or Elizabeth Sladen for years and still not try anything, I buy him as asexual, at least as far as humans are concerned. He's over 1,000 years old. It must be like talking to children for him. He's, according to very old law, also supposed to be married. Why is the show like this now? It's supposed to be a man in a box and his companions going on fantastical adventures. Why are they spending time talking about aliens' pronouns and what 16th century physicists the Doctor finds hot? The character has been so diminished. The Doctor used to have an air of grand mystery, and that seems a very long way away now. They're turning a sci-fi show into a pride rally, and after that, they thankfully give it a rest for the rest of the episode. The alien ship that they landed on has a long central corridor and the walls seem to shift and move. There's a single robot slowly moving down the central corridor and the whole ship seems deserted. In the meantime, the TARDIS, the Doctor's ship, has disappeared after he set it to repair itself and it sensed that they were in danger. Him and Donna try to repair the ship and they split up to do it faster. The Doctor leaves Donna to repair a computer, and after what she did with a cup of coffee, I wouldn't trust her to open a can of beans. But the writers needed them to split up as a plot device, so they have to, even if it makes little sense. The Doctor comes back to join Donna, but as we soon find out, it's not actually the Doctor. It's one of a pair of shape-shifting creatures that live in a void outside the known universe, where the ship has ended up. The Doctor also has a replicant of Donna with him, and they are decidedly not friendly. They want to get into the universe in order to cause war and carnage. The replicants are slowly turning into the Doctor and Donna as they refine their copies more and more and track them throughout the ship. And once they become them, they can take the TARDIS and leave. Only the TARDIS is already gone. So it's quite a nice idea, but on the whole I couldn't call the concept original. The main part of the story, having an abandoned ship with a long central corridor and moving walls in a lost region of space, with body horror, the feeling of isolation, it was all heavily derivative for me of the film Event Horizon, just with more psychological tones that reminded me heavily of an earlier effort by Russell T Davies, an episode of Doctor Who from 2008 called Midnight, including the knocking on the hull. Watch those two episodes back to back, this one and Midnight, and you should probably see how badly the show has deteriorated. But even with the lack of originality, this episode still managed to be somewhat creepy in places. The Doctor finally works out what happened. These shapeshifters got aboard the ship, and they were in the process of copying the captain, so they could get back to the known universe and wreak havoc. So the captain set the ship to slowly self-destruct, in a way that the replicants wouldn't notice, and threw themselves out of an airlock, so the replicants would not be able to copy the captain's mind and foil the self-destruct. The knocking was the captain's spacesuit hitting the hull of the ship. But when the Doctor works this out, the replicants know as well because they're copying his mind. And sadly the whole concept of the episode doesn't make much sense in the lore of the show. The Doctor's ship is sentient and guides him and his companions to places where they'll be needed to prevent loss of life or tragedy. A lot of the concepts in Doctor Who are quite clever, such as his regeneration, that allows the role of Doctor Who to be seamlessly recast. And the sentient ship, like the Force in Star Wars, allows the writers a lot of wriggle room. The Doctor does not run into these situations by accident, he's instead being guided. So the biggest problem for me with this episode is, why is the Doctor even there? If the Doctor and Donna had never arrived, the ship would have self-destructed anyway. There was no reason for them being there at all. At the end, they had to stop the shapeshifters, but they only needed to be stopped because they learned what was going to happen from the Doctor being there. It could be argued that the TARDIS was malfunctioning, but then it becomes a massive coincidence that the Doctor and Donna would randomly arrive there. Of anywhere they could have landed, inside or outside the entire universe, they would arrive on that ship on that day, the day the ship was due to explode. The most charitable idea I could come up with was that the TARDIS was only partly broken. It was still trying to guide the Doctor to where he was needed, but messed up on account of its time core being on fire and filled with coffee. But that's me writing the script for them. In a series where the lore is so cunningly crafted that it's almost impossible to write in stupid coincidences, Russell T Davies still somehow managed to do it.
Fuck. Jesus.
I can feel your anger.
What about the other Jedi spread across the galaxy?